There's a street in Nashville where, on one side, tourists are lining up outside honky-tonks before noon. On the other side, executives are filing into the corporate headquarters of the largest for-profit hospital company on Earth. No train connects them, no subway runs beneath them, no light rail stops anywhere in the city. Nashville is a top 25 American metro absorbing roughly 100 new residents per day, and it has no regional rail infrastructure of any kind. That is the first thing that does not make sense about Nashville. It is not the last. There is a pattern to how major American cities come into existence. A harbor forms or rivers meet, or a mountain pass forces trade to stop and unload. Geography creates a bottleneck. The bottleneck creates a city. Nashville fits none of this. It sits on a modest river in a landlocked limestone basin with no dominant freight corridor, no coastal access, no mineral wealth at meaningful scale. By conventional urban development logic, it should be a regional city of maybe 300,000 people. It is instead a top 25 American metro absorbing roughly 100 new residents per day, with a skyline under constant construction and a land market that has reshaped the entire Mid-South economy. Chicago sits at the southern tip of Lake Michigan, the only logical transfer point between the Great Lakes and the Mississippi. New Orleans controls the mouth of the Mississippi. Pittsburgh sat at the confluence of three rivers. The geographic logic in each case is overwhelming and predetermined. Almost every major American city can trace its origin to a geographic advantage the land provided. Nashville has none of those things at meaningful scale. What it has instead is something no urban planner ever put in a growth model: a sound. And the decision to build infrastructure around that sound inverted the standard sequence of American city formation in a way the city has never fully recovered from and never needed to. Nashville sits on what geologists call the Nashville Dome, an ancient uplift in bedrock where Ordovician limestone pushes close to the surface across a wide circular basin. This produced the Cedar Glades, a rare ecosystem of exposed limestone pavement found almost nowhere else in North America, and it explains the city's characteristic rolling terrain. But it provided no strategic geographic advantage. The Cumberland River bisects the city and connects southward to the Ohio River system and eventually to the Mississippi, a real but modest trade corridor. Nothing comparable to the Great Lakes system that built Chicago and Cleveland. Nothing like the Atlantic seaboard ports that built Baltimore. When Tennessee became a state in 1796, Nashville was one of three candidates for capital. Knoxville had geographic logic, closer to the original population centers, closer to the mountains forming the state's eastern boundary. Murfreesboro had a legitimate claim on equidistance. Nashville won the permanent capital designation in 1843 through a legislative vote, not geographic necessity. The Civil War reinforced this pattern. Nashville fell to Union forces in February 1862 and spent the remainder of the war as a massive federal supply depot. Its rail lines commandeered and its population swollen with soldiers and freed people seeking safety behind Union lines. The investment in rail infrastructure that followed gave the city post-war connections it would not have otherwise earned. Everything that followed had to be manufactured, but it was manufactured on top of infrastructure that arrived by accident. In most American cities, the sequence runs in one direction. Economic activity concentrates because of geographic advantage. Population grows, cultural institutions follow. Nashville ran this sequence backward. By the early 1950s, a cluster of recording studios, music publishers, and booking agencies had begun consolidating on 16th and 17th Avenues South, roughly 16 blocks, 2 miles from the state capitol. This was not driven by population scale or pre-existing wealth. It was driven by the physical proximity of a small number of producers, session musicians, and label scouts who understood that proximity creates deal flow. The cluster deepened. RCA Studio B opened in 1957. By the 1960s, the Nashville sound, a production style developed specifically by the studios on those blocks, had turned the district into the dominant production center for country music in the world. The sound itself was a deliberate commercial strategy, smoother and more orchestrated than traditional country, designed to expand into pop radio markets. It worked because the musicians, producers, and engineers who refined it were all within walking distance of each other. Music Row functioned identically to a financial district or a research campus. Density of specialized talent in a small geographic footprint compounded expertise and output in ways dispersed geography could not replicate. The session musician community that formed around it played on thousands of recordings across a decade without leaving a handful of city blocks. This was industrial infrastructure built for manufacturing a product, recorded sound, and exporting it to national markets. The Broadway entertainment corridor that now generates hundreds of millions in annual sales tax revenue is the retail face of a wholesale industrial district 2 miles south. Nashville did not become a music city because it was large and prosperous. It became large and prosperous because 16 blocks of deliberate physical infrastructure were built before the population had any reason to be there. In 1962, Nashville merged the city of Nashville and Davidson County into a single metropolitan government, the first consolidation of its kind among large American cities. The decision was driven by mundane fiscal pressures. Suburban residents were using city services without paying city taxes, and the county government was duplicating functions the city already performed. The merger seemed like an administrative efficiency measure. What it actually created was a planning authority with jurisdiction over 526 square miles, a territory larger than Los Angeles proper, governed by a single legislative body with unified taxing, zoning, and annexation power. For comparison, San Francisco governs 47 square miles, Boston governs 48, Miami governs 36. Those cities are locked into boundaries drawn in the 19th century, while their metro regions sprawl across dozens of independent municipalities outside their control. When Nashville's growth wave hit in the 1990s and accelerated through the 2000s, the metropolitan government could make land decisions across the entire metro footprint without negotiating between competing jurisdictions. It could annex new development before it incorporated independently, extend infrastructure into growth corridors, and capture the resulting tax base within a single budget. Cities like Memphis, Louisville, and Charlotte spent critical decades fighting the political fragmentation that Nashville had resolved 30 years earlier, watching tax base flee to suburban municipalities they had no authority to absorb. The merger did not cause Nashville's growth. The people who voted for it had no particular expectation of the boom that would follow, but it meant that when the growth arrived, Nashville had the governmental infrastructure to absorb it, and its peer cities did not. In May 2018, Nashville voters rejected the Let's Move Nashville transit plan by a 64-36 margin. The proposal included 5 light rail corridors, a downtown transit tunnel, and a bus rapid transit network at a cost of approximately $5.4 billion in local bonds. 64% of Nashville voters looked at a city absorbing 100 new residents per day and decided fixed rail was not the correct response. Every peer city that experienced comparable growth, Charlotte, Denver, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, passed equivalent measures during equivalent growth windows. Nashville did not. The physical result is legible on any map. Hundreds of thousands of workers commuting inward from Williamson, Rutherford, and Wilson counties on Interstates 65, 24, and 40 with no rail alternative. The WeGo bus system carries approximately 8 million annual riders, comparable to mid-sized cities, a fraction of Nashville's economic scale. Nashville is the largest American boomtown in the modern era to reach major city scale, while categorically refusing to build transit infrastructure. The structural explanation sits in the 1962 consolidation. Nashville's metropolitan government captures growth tax revenue across 526 square miles, generating funds to build more highways, enabling more car-dependent development in the next ring. In fragmented metros like Atlanta or Dallas, suburban municipalities cannot fund regional highway expansion alone, creating traffic crises that build political pressure for transit. In Nashville, metro government captures enough growth tax base to relieve that pressure before it becomes politically inevitable. The Tennessee Department of Transportation projects a 40% increase in vehicle trips on Davidson County roads by 2040 with no major fixed rail alternative in the capital planning pipeline. The city absorbed the growth without the system. Every commute on Interstate 65 at 7 a.m. makes it visible. Nashville is home to more than 900 healthcare companies. HCA Healthcare, one of the largest private hospital operators in the world, was founded in Nashville in 1968 and remains headquartered there, generating approximately $64 billion in annual revenue as of 2023. Community Health Systems, the second largest for-profit hospital chain in the United States, is also headquartered in Nashville. The broader Middle Tennessee healthcare sector employs approximately 570,000 people. The music industry in Nashville employs roughly 56,000 people in Davidson County. Healthcare employs more than 150,000, roughly 3 times the employment, significantly more revenue, and less than 5% of the tourism and cultural attention. The Broadway corridor drives hotel and convention revenue, but healthcare profits fund the office towers, the residential development, and the high-income migration reshaping neighborhoods like the Gulch, Germantown, and East Nashville. The concentration was not geographic inevitability. Tennessee's business-friendly regulatory framework for-profit healthcare, combined with Vanderbilt University Medical Center as a research and talent anchor, created favorable conditions. When HCA succeeded in the late 1960s and early 1970s, Nashville became the logical place for healthcare entrepreneurs to access talent, capital, and professional networks. The pattern repeated Music Row's logic exactly. First mover creates specialist talent pool, healthcare lawyers, hospital management consultants, medical finance experts. Second company locates near existing talent. Eventually, Nashville becomes the place healthcare companies must be to access the professional ecosystem. Geography did not produce this concentration. The concentration produced its own geography. Nashville's largest employers, HCA, Community Health Systems, Vanderbilt, are institutions with distributed suburban campuses designed to be car accessible. A nurse might work at 3 different clinic locations in a week. Nashville's core economy is spatially incompatible with hub-and-spoke transit in ways that finance hub cities are not. The symbol of Nashville is transit-friendly. The economy of Nashville is car-dependent. For-profit healthcare generates revenue that cycles through Nashville's economy in ways tourism cannot replicate. Music brings visitors who spend money temporarily. Healthcare brings corporate profits that stay in Nashville as invested capital. Music Row fills honky-tonks on Broadway. Healthcare profits fund the luxury condo towers being built around them. Nashville's brand is a sound. Nashville's economy is a hospital system. The gap between those two facts is where the city actually lives, and the gap explains why Nashville keeps growing in directions its public identity would never predict. Most American cities followed the same path. Geography created a bottleneck. The bottleneck created commerce. Commerce created population. Population created culture. Nashville ran that sequence backward. Culture created commerce. Commerce created population. Population created a government merger that was structurally ready for growth no one anticipated. The growth arrived and the city absorbed it without building the transit infrastructure that every urban planning model says a city at this scale requires, and kept growing anyway. Nashville proved geography is optional if you build the right thing on top of it. What no one predicted was what happens after that, when the thing you built creates growth. The land never justified, and the growth creates contradictions. The original builders never imagined, and the contradictions become permanent features rather than temporary problems waiting for a solution. The result is a city that is genuinely difficult to categorize. Its brand is a sound industry. Its economy is a healthcare industry. Its government structure consolidated 50 years before peer cities attempted it. Its road network operates 50 years behind the transit systems comparable boomtowns built during identical growth windows. The city that inverted the standard pattern of American urban formation now functions exactly as that inversion requires, backward, fragmented, and somehow still accelerating.